We will begin our class on the third training, which is training in patience. For a Bodhisattva who wishes for the enjoyment of virtue, all harm doers are like precious treasures. Therefore, it is the practice of Bodhisattvas to cultivate patience, free of hatred and animosity toward anyone. The great vast enjoyment of virtue, the meditation on patience, is supreme among all austerity practices. For all Bodhisattvas who wish to engage in such practices, all harm that appears, such as suffering and enemies, is like opening up an inexhaustible treasure of priceless, wish-fulfilling jewels, rare to find within their own house. For someone who's practicing on patience, if they were to encounter the enemies or encounter some suffering situations, they would be extremely delighted, just as if someone presented a piece of wish-fulfilling jewel right to their face. Nowadays, there are lots of people that would be terrified of encountering others who may create harm to ourselves, or people with terrible personality, or people that would create suffering to you. But to a true bodhisattva, throughout the process of engaging in practice, if one were to enforce harm upon such a person, then they would be extremely delighted. Hence, to meditate on the three kinds of patience without having even the slightest angry or hateful thought towards those who are causing harm is the practice whereby all bodhisattvas train in the paramita of patience. Whenever we look at such wonderful teachings in Buddhism, we indeed feel quite delighted that these teachings are presented. On the other hand, we feel quite ashamed that at times we really want to practice it, but we couldn't remember it. At times we really need to practice it, we couldn't remember it. And sometimes it is because of our lack of mindfulness, and sometimes it's because lack of effort, and sometimes the practitioners may become jaded after a period of time. When at the very beginning of people's ordination, they feel that they need to make everything perfect, but slowly and slowly people would get jaded and tired, and then the power of practice would slowly decrease. Maybe not to the worst, but sometimes people would not be able to even keep up with their practice, especially for those who are not very stable. But after trying for a period of time, even if they want to they want to practice as the text has taught, sometimes they couldn't work in such a way, they couldn't practice in such a way. According to ornament of the sutras, it says that the patient endurance of taking no offense, and precious garland of the middle way teaches patience is the abandonment of anger, taking no offense towards those who cause harm, joyfully accepting suffering when it occurs, and remaining extremely interested in becoming certain about the Dharma are the essence of patience. Not to feel disturbed by harm doers is the patience of taking no offense towards those who cause them. If suffering occurs, not to feel disturbed and discouraged is the patience of joyfully accepting suffering. Having found certainty in the nature of qualities of the three jewels and in the meaning of selflessness, one reflects again and again until these two do not constitute any conflict. This is the patience of understanding the Dharma. Whatever it may be, emptiness or the cause and effect, if you would be able to accept it, then that is the patience of understanding the Dharma. It sounds really good. Would you be able to practice it? And then the next one talks about for the faults of anger. The faults are not visible in the present life, are described in the Bodhisattva Pitaka. That which is called anger destroys the roots of virtue accumulated over 100,000 aeons. In the way of Bodhisattva, it is said that any virtue accumulated for 1,000 aeons, such as generosity and offerings to the Buddhas, all of it will be utterly destroyed by a single moment of anger. If you were to have even a moment of anger, if you got super angry for just a single moment, then the merits that's accumulated for 1,000 aeons, not even mentioning about the time length that would be 1,000 aeons. If you were to contemplate 1 aeon of time, that is inconceivable. So just one moment of anger could destroy the merits that's accumulated for 1,000 aeons. Lots of our fellow practitioners whom made great aspirations to serve the Sangha, but if they don't have a good temper, though that your service to the Sangha is meritorious, a moment of anger would be able to destroy the qualities and merits and virtues that you've accumulated for aeons, 1,000 aeons. All the qualities that you've all the virtues that you've accumulated through making the practice of generosity and making offerings to the Buddhas and serve the Sangha and so on and so forth. For that reason, we need to work on our personality. We should not have so much anger. If you were to be quite aggressive, then even if you were to practice virtue every day, your virtue will be destroyed again and again. All would be destroyed again and again. So you have to start all the way from the beginning. That would be quite tiresome, isn't it? Then, as for the faults that are visible, such as not being able to experience a peaceful mind in this life, the same sort of states, which is the way of the Bodhisattva, when having painful, angry thoughts, the mind will not experience peace. Concerning the benefit of patience, it states one who is disciplined will conquer anger. He will be happy in this life and in the ones to come. If you remember the story included in the words of my perfect teacher, where a bhikshu was said by someone that he is a good bhikshu, but he doesn't have good temper. Then Patrul Rinpoche said that there is nothing in the world that is worse than someone who has anger. As long as the bhikshu has anger in his mind stream, he is not a good bhikshu. So if we were to have anger, one would not be happy themselves, and they would not be able to sleep, and they would not be able to carry on whatever they need to do throughout the day. So we need to really reduce our anger, our aggression. Maybe we're not able to completely get rid of anger at this point, but at least we can reduce it. I really want to confess that when I was young and when I was still in school, I used to harm my classmates. I sometimes would fight with them, and that would cause them bleeding. I don't really remember anyone made me bleed, but I am simply stating this, not bluffing about how good I was good at fighting with the others, but I really want to say that I used to have lots of aggression, but after I got ordained, I tried my very best to practice according to the chapter on patience in words of my the way of the Bodhisattva. So after being in Laranga for 30 years, sometimes I do have a little bit of quarrels with one or the other sometimes, especially. But I myself would try my very best to work with my own aggression, especially whenever I'm with the Guru, and especially whenever I am with the fellow Sangha members. Sometimes I would remember that this person has aggression towards me, or sometimes I have aggression, but I try my very best to change my behavior. And in my memory, at least, I don't think I've ever offended someone with my aggression. So As long as you do not work on your aggression, I just want to bring it into your attention that aggression would definitely destroy your practice. Doesn't matter if you're a male practitioner or a female practitioner, a lay practitioner or monastics. As long as aggression has control over your mind stream, then it is just like a poisonous snake that's residing in your mind. According to the Bodhisattva Charavatara, then you would have no freedom whatsoever. Whenever you look at people acting out of their aggression, you would be able to see that it is completely unbearable. And there are people, for example, with aggression, traveling with others, that they are not able to get along with each other. After paying a pilgrimage visit to Lhasa, the two people who went there happily may come back separately. Hence, there are many ultimate and temporary benefits of happiness in the present as well as in the future lives, not falling into the three lower realms, the attainment of hell realms, liberation, and so forth. This is according to the Sutra of the Bodhisattva's treasures. And then it says that just as the root verses directly point out, it is not enough to simply refrain from being angry at the harm doers. It is reasonable to be happy about them. Well, not only that we should not be aggressive to those harm doers, we should be happy about them. And we should see them as a precious treasure, a wish-fulfilling jewel. Whenever people were to enforce harm upon you, then you should see them as, oh, this is my wish-fulfilling treasure that is coming to me. Unlike how nowadays people would say that I would repay you, that I would take revenge upon you, I would take one tooth for a tooth. As for that, the way of the Bodhisattva says the following: if I had not caused him harm, this one would inflict no harm on me. Rather, it is like a treasure appearing in my house without my having applied any effort. Those ways of bringing bad circumstances upon the path that were explained before are all included here in the practice of patience. As for the free of hatred and animosity towards anyone, the ornament of the sutras mentions, be patient toward everything. Hence, it teaches how to practice the extraordinary patience of bearing with everything, such as suffering and harm doers. Furthermore, Lord Atisha said the following: in the dark age, anger will be rampant. Therefore, we wear the armor of patience free of anger. Nowadays, in the dark age, people would get angry out of no reason. Sometimes, even without causes, without any apparent causes, people would get very aggressive for really no reason at all. In Tibet, we would say that people who are extremely aggressive, they would reply to others' questions with evil intention or with aggressive intentions. They would perceive everyone's inquiry as aggressive and harmful to them. What Lord Atisha pointed out is exactly that. In the Dark Age, anger will be rampant. So we should wear the armor of patience that is free of anger. Hopefully that armor won't be too heavy. He continues that the supreme patience is to take a low seat. For all of us, if we were to stay at a low place, as a low seat, and recognize that we are simply a lowly one, then it is not that easy to generate aggression. So, to continue in the questions and answers of the Father teachings appears. Atisha, if harm is inflicted, how shall I take it? And he replied, said, Juntunpa, do not return anyone's rage. Atisha, if I am about to be killed, how should I take that? And Juntunpa, he said, and then Atisha said, Juntunpa, you should understand it to be the response to your having killed in the past. When I first came to Larangar, this teaching was very difficult for me to accept it. I remember that I was reading this in my very humble grass-made little hut. And then Gompawa also explained the root of patience comes down to being humble. If you were to be competitive and then return harm to the harm doers, then there's no end to harm at all. Not only Dharma practitioners are supposed to practice this. In fact, lots of worldly beings, the successful worldly beings, they also practice patience in such a way. If you remember the chairman of the New Oriental Company, Yu Minhong, he started the company and then he was the president and then he was kicked off from the board. So let's look at how he reacted to it. Now, Yu Minhong states that at the point when New Oriental was in deep conflict, and another one of the major stakeholders asked me to step down as the chairman of the organization of the company, and then step down again as the president. At the time I complied to their request, I was not even invited to any of the major decision-making meetings because I was told that if I were to attend those meetings, their decisions could be changed. So I let them do whatever they had to do. I simply put on my backpack and then went into each of the classrooms as just a normal teacher and started teaching students. After a year, they came back to me and asked me to return to my position because whatever they were doing were not working. So I then returned back to be the CEO as well as the president, and then we worked together again in synergy, and eventually the result was good. New Oriental went IPO, and then the result for everyone was good. In the movie depicting our story, you see lots of conflict that we had, but I think everybody wanted to put in their effort so that they can have a good result. This is simply normal. But what I really want to say is that there is no need to be competitive to the others. The world is big, is vast. As long as you do whatever you are ought to do and do it excellently, and you would be able to get to the result that you want. You probably know the story that a few of the partners started the New Oriental School, and then the other partners didn't want Yu Minhong to be the president, and they tried to kick him out. So we see lots of those conflicts happening, and how Yu Minhong dealt with that crisis was that he simply worked with his patience, and he was quite forbearant to all of the situation. Over here, Potoa also said that if one fails to cultivate patience when just slight harm occurs, then one loses one's vow and thereby destroys the teachings from their root. We are not universal masters of the teachings, but if we lose our vows, then our purpose has vanished. It means that if you cannot practice forbearance, if you were not to be able to practice patience, if someone were to harm your teacher, were to harm Buddhism, and then you started to curse the others who's doing all of those harm upon the teacher or the Dharma, then your action of cursing others, in fact, is breaking your own vow, is to destroy Dharma itself, and then there is no value to the Dharma. Nowadays, lots of people says that, well, I'm simply doing this for the Dharma, simply doing this because of the Guru and because of the Dharma center. But if you were to do all of those out of anger, then you are simply destroying Dharma. It is stated in the way of the Bodhisattva as well. It says that in the Bodhisattva Charivatara that the three jewels do not have that perception of being harmed. For that reason, you do not need to generate aggression. And then, according to Geshe Karakpa, since anger is that which conquers virtue from its root, not to regard it as a fault would be a mistake. Chikawa said the following: do not hold on to things too long, and do not lie in ambush. In fact, the worst harm that you can create for yourself is to have aggression to others and is to ambush the others with your aggression and trying to harm the others. That is the worst kind of harm. So whenever, even if you were to protect your teacher and protect certain sentient beings, if you were to have a sense of righteousness, if you were to have a sense of protecting one and generate anger because you want to protect certain sides, then that is aggression. You do not need to fall into the trap of affliction and then start to fight the others and start to have conflicts with the others. In fact, even in the history of the various kinds of conflicts of the Tibetan Buddhism schools, there were the history of one school fighting the other schools, and there were the period of history where blood was shed, and those kinds of history simply shows that people didn't know what Dharma is, and that they simply wanted to protect the sense of righteousness, and it is because that their mind stream had been tinted by affliction and is completely useless and not useful at all. Furthermore, Gyaltse Tokme himself states, since the enemy anger steals the splendor of this and future lives, a great army of patience is extremely important. The Tibetans would say that at the times when family members would quarrel with each other, the shameless ones would win those arguments. It is because those people without a sense of principle, without a sense of knowing what to say and what not to say, they would be able to win over an argument. But a true hero would be able to win an argument when they are debating with the enemies. It is because if we were to be able to tame our mind, we are the true heroes, we're the true warriors. In this way, he himself made aspirational prayers and practiced the three kinds of patience, and he likewise practiced them in this way.
Zhubum tsulen zhuwa zhu